Tennessee wrapping up its press conference just moments ago. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Caleb, a couple of players might potentially return this week, and Jaylen McCollough, who was charged with aggravated assault, and that was has now been a couple weeks ago, and his matter has been cleared with the university. So could he play on Saturday? Quite possibly. And then Cedric Tillman, I think the plan was for him to play against Alabama, but they determined he wasn't ready for that. So I think it's just a matter of time till Tillman's back. And I wouldn't be surprised to see either or both play on Saturday. Josh Heupel was pretty non-committal. Your thoughts on what he had to say in his press conference just moments ago?
Yeah, particularly Cedric Tillman. I'd be really shocked if Tillman doesn't play on Saturday. I think you're right. They were going to try to go Alabama, but if not, the plan was always going to be Kentucky. I think as you wrote, the injury, takes about a month to heal from, usually with the surgery. It would have been a month last Monday. Why play him against UT Martin on Saturday? So I think Eibel's using a little bit of gamesmanship here. He doesn't want Kentucky to have to prepare, or he wants Kentucky to kind of wonder about what they're having to prepare for. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Tillman's not out there. McCollough is a little bit of a different situation that kind of depends on how long the legal process takes, and I don't know how in America players still don't, or people still don't get the right to a speedy trial. The AJ Johnson case took 4 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know this is like 4 weeks, not 4 years with McCollough, but yeah, if they're holding him out until the legal process wraps up, that might be a little unfair to him too, because we don't know how long that's going to take.
No, and the fact that the university has cleared him to me is a pretty positive sign. And Josh Heupel, Nick's. Let's look at Nick Saban for a second, who caught an awful lot of heat for not suspending Jermaine Burton. Josh Heupel at this point in his career probably doesn't want to be overly aggressive in getting a player out there. But it appears to me that if he's cleared the university process and if Josh Heupel believes him, that I'd trot him out there against Kentucky. There's a big gray area. Again, for those that don't know, we'll just recap you real quick. Man admitted to been drinking, went into the wrong apartment. McCullough was there with his girlfriend. An incident ensued. The gray area is, did McCullough chase him down? Because it supposedly happened 30 feet away. But I'm with you. Speedy trial, that would be nice. Number one. Number two, I'd play him. I think Josh Heupel has enough equity at this point where I would play him if I believed what Jaylen McCollough told me.
Oh, I agree. And if I'm Josh Heupel, I would come out and I would make the case. He was cleared by the university. Even if the investigation's ongoing, I'm not going to keep him being punished because of an investigation that's not wrapping up the way it should. And if the investigation turns out something different from KPD, then I would say, if I'm Josh Heupel, he could say we'll adjust and we'll react accordingly. But you are on borrowed time with college athletes who only have a certain number of games they can play in a college career. And I mean, you are taking those away right now for something that he may not have done. And so, or something that may not be what we thought it was, put it that way.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty gray from the get. And with the McCullough situation too, if you wait for all of the legal proceedings to play out, you could almost guarantee that he's not going to be able to play for the remainder of the regular season.
Exactly. I agree. So I say go ahead, play him, and say, I mean, McCullough's technically got another year left because of the COVID ruling. So yeah, just go ahead and play him and be like, look, if they come out and conclude something different in the investigation, we'll react then. But until then, he's playing and the ball and fully put the ball in the KPD's court at that point, which I've been saying.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I've been saying for years, NFL and college, the whole Roger Goodell clean up the league with the NFL. I've always thought that was a mistake too. The whole, process of suspensions or whatever. I've always been more like Roger Goodell and the NFL should consistently be like, we're going to let the legal system play it out. That's in their hands, not ours, over whether or not a player deserves any sort of punishment. And if something comes out is determined through the legal system, then we'll react. But until then, we're not doing anything.
No, I'm fine with that. And then his thoughts on the offensive line, and your thoughts on what the offensive line. I was visiting with Chris Landry, who can check out. Please like, subscribe, and share. He's on our YouTube channel. And Caleb, This offensive line has really outperformed what most people thought they would be able to do. Your thoughts on what Tennessee has done from a run standpoint and a pass protection standpoint?
Yeah, they've been shockingly good. We talked right before we came on air. I think Jerome Carvin is now the third offensive lineman to win SEC Lineman of the Week this year. And I mean, that's a huge boost. I think Josh Heupel's right. I think it's just another year in the program. I think what we're kind of seeing and I think that starts with the offensive line and defensive line, but what we're kind of seeing with Tennessee this year is in an era of, and don't get me wrong, we still cover and follow recruiting tremendously here. But in an era so obsessed with it, sometimes there really isn't a substitute for having a bunch of guys back that have played together in the same system for a year. I mean, they look very familiar with what they need to do. And one of the things Josh Heupel brought up, or that was brought up in the presser, was the 3rd and 1, 4th and 2. They're converting those this year. They weren't converting those last year a lot of times. And then on the other side, you're right. I think losing Matthew Butler was a big deal on the defensive line. They also lost Caleb Tremblay and Jaquan Blakely, and they're better on the line this year than they were last year, which I didn't see happening. So I do think this might actually, hot take, this might be their biggest test on Saturday so far. I think Kentucky's line may be tougher than Alabama's right now, or at least better, right? More experienced, more seasoned than Alabama's right now. I don't want to use the word better coach comparing to Nick Saban, but they look better coached.
Well, yeah, I feel like there's a bunch of guys on Alabama's defensive front that maybe feel like they'd already accomplished what they needed to accomplish in college. And I think this Kentucky defensive front is solid. The thing, though, to flip the sides of the ball that's interesting with Will Levis, now they're going to run the ball a little bit more with Rodriguez back, but this Kentucky football team is going to throw it. So it's significant to have McCollough back there, maybe more so than we would have thought at the beginning of the year when this was like a ground and pound type of team in the previews that we thought that they're going to throw it around. They could use McCollough this week.
Yeah, I think more important is for Tyler Barron and Byron Young to step up. I think that Will Levis is a statue in the pocket. And Kentucky, where they are weak on the line of scrimmage, is they don't have that good a pass protection. I mean, Will Levis has been getting hit a lot this year. So I think this is one of those games where you turn Byron Young and Tyler Barron loose and you let them go after Will Levis every play they can. And I think that's going to determine how the game goes. I know I've talked about you can be mediocre or bad, and mediocre is better than bad, and the secondary can at least be somewhat mediocre with McCullough in there, but Will Levis is an NFL caliber quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball. And I'm sorry, I don't think there's anybody on Tennessee that's going to right now that could actually stop him in the secondary. So I think it's going to have to come from the pass rush up front.
I agree with that. It doesn't hurt though to have depth, to have the ability to,
Sure.
Again, not a great secondary, but McCullough would be considered one of the better ones. So
yeah, a veteran, one of the more experienced ones.
Yeah, you'd rather have him than not. I think we would agree on that. And then last thing, the Kentucky game last year, huge game, and you don't pin a lot on Kentucky games most of the time, but the fact that Josh Heupel referenced it too, that was when they started to believe in the preparation during the week, and that was a hard-fought shootout game, and I wonder where Tennessee is. We could say the same thing about close wins against Pittsburgh this year, against Alabama, against Florida. But where is Tennessee as a program, if not for pulling that one out against Kentucky last year?
That's a good question. I mean, they could very easily have 3 losses right now this year, if we're talking about close games. Although Florida, not really. I don't think Florida was as close as the score indicated. They were trying to run out the clock at the end of the game and playing soft. They were trying to make Florida work the field. So, okay, they could have 2 losses this year, if not for just winning close games. And I agree. I think that comes back to the Kentucky game last year. I actually think the confidence in the system came before that. It came when they beat Missouri a week after losing to Florida to beat Missouri like 63-28. We didn't know Missouri would be turning into a dumpster fire of a program at that moment.
We did not.
And so I think Tennessee was able to build confidence based on the false hope of a win that wasn't as legitimate as we thought it was at the time. But, sometimes you need that.
Yeah, the child in me laughs at the term dumpster fire pretty much every time it's said. So he's Caleb Calhoun. We'll have complete coverage on Off the Hook Sports, and we'll have a wrap up of Josh Heupel's press conference and players visiting with the media as we speak. But again, with the Jaylen McCollough situation and Cedric Tillman, from a time frame standpoint, it looks like he would be able to play. As far as McCullough, he has cleared the university's process. So now it sounds like to me it's kind of in Josh Heupel's lap. What does he want to do with this? So he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation